Back everybody, my name is Tucker, and in the second of today's videos, I wanted to talk about the Atlanta Hawks and the offseason, and more specifically the free agency that they've had to this point, because I think this is a team that is certainly an interesting group. It's a team that people have been kind of waiting to make a leap, and I think they're making moves this offseason to really put themselves in an awesome position to potentially make a bit of a leap next season. I want to give them some credit for that. I know we've been a little bit negative in the last three videos where I'm talking about free agency, so we're going to do a positive one today. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every day, all throughout the NBA offseason, and we are super close to 100,000 subscribers, and it'd be awesome if you could help me get there. You can also leave a like rating on the video. It helps me out a lot, helps the video get out to more people on YouTube, and you can check me out at the various socials at the bottom of the screen as well. But with all those things said, let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. This is a team that when I've talked about their future, I've been a little bit pessimistic. I've been a little bit negative in the past about what could potentially be happening here for Atlanta, but I want to give them some credit for some good moves that I think they've made in the offseason. But I also want to get into some things that could be happening next for them that are really interesting. It's one of the reasons why I don't typically, or at least not this offseason, do a full like winners and losers of free agency video, at least not in the beginning, because I like to get a little bit more in depth in terms of here's the guys that they signed, but then here's what they could also be looking to do with their roster overall over the next year or two. Okay, let's just talk about their free agency stuff first. We'll sprinkle in a little bit of draft knowledge, and then we'll talk about what's happening next year for Atlanta. So they signed one of the bigger deals of the offseason at this point by bringing in Danilo Gallinari in a 3-year contract worth over $20 million a year, which for some people might be considered an overpay. We'll talk about that in a second. They also brought in Rajon Rondo, 2 years, 15, and Kris Dunn, 2 years, 10. Let's talk about Gallo first because it's the big number here. I don't mind this contract whatsoever if I'm Atlanta. I know that I'm going to need to overpay players a little bit to come to Atlanta, to come to a situation where, you know, winning just simply hasn't been a proven part of the equation here for a little while. And I'm okay with a bit of an overpay for bringing in someone in Gallo that I think fits really well with this roster, if you consider some potential moves to this roster that we'll talk about a little bit later on. So Gallo with the 4 spot provides great shooting. He can provide a little bit of isolation scoring. He can score in the post. He can drive and kick a little bit. He's an okay playmaker. He's a well-rounded type of offensive player that fits really well with a group that is generally a little bit specialized in what they can or can't do. It's Trae Young doing everything. It's everybody else off the ball shooting or they're rolling to the rim. And Gallo provides a little bit more of that versatility in the offensive end where if Trae Young's off the court, he can create offense for himself. If Trae Young is on the court, he can shoot off the ball. He can attack closeouts. A lot of different versatility there. Over $20 million, as Woj pointed out the other day, for a 30-plus-year-old player that's never made an all-star team is actually an NBA record in terms of salary. But I don't necessarily think it's all that much of an overpay, and I think it is an awesome move for Atlanta. Now, the second one is probably my least favorite signing for Atlanta at this point. I don't think it's awful. I'm just not a big Rajon Rondo guy. And I know that he really helped the Lakers and he improved his value, but we've been doing this for Rondo for 5 years now, where 1 year he has a good season, he signs a contract, then he sucks. And then we go back and forth every other year. And I just worry that they might get bad Rondo this year, especially on a team that might not be as competitive as he wants them to be. I think they're going to be good, but I don't know if he is really understanding the difference between playing in LA and winning a title and playing in Atlanta and the team not being that great, maybe winning like 40 games in a shortened season. So with that said, I understand the veteran presence. You bring in Rondo, he's going to be able to teach guys, but he's also been kind of a weird team fit type of guy, and that makes me a bit nervous. The number doesn't really matter to me. It's a player option for next season. If he's unhappy, he'll opt out and leave. I don't love that move, but it's at least interesting. The one that I actually really like, though, here is Kris Dunn signing a 2-year, $10 million contract. Again, it's another one of those one-and-ones with a player option. Kris Dunn can really defend, and that's about it to this point. He can't really shoot. Playmaking has been it's been okay. They gave him a lot of chances in Chicago to make something out of his career in the backcourt, but I love the just taking a flyer on Kris Dunn move here because this is a team that's definitely needed some defensive help in the backcourt done, and ideally Rondo should be able to provide that whether they're starting or coming off the bench. And I love the contrast now between the two guys that they had in the backcourt last year and the two guys that they brought in now. When you've got Trae Young and Kevin Huerter, who are very offensive focused, and then in contrast, you've got Rondo, who can be a good defender and that can also play make, run the team, and then Kris Dunn, who's a really good guard defender. I like the contrast there between those two guys. And when you put all those things together and you add these free agents along with bringing in Onyeka Okongwu in the draft at the 6th overall pick, here's the rotation for Atlanta as it stands right now going into next season. It's Trae, and who knows who's going to start, but we'll just put a 5 together and then a 4, and then we'll talk about it, okay? We've got Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, Danilo Gallinari, Clint Capella, Rajon Rondo, Kris Dunn, Cam Reddish, and Onyeka Okongwu. Now, one player that I did not mention in that 9-man rotation is John Collins. And the reason being is because I don't really see a way how this isn't pointing towards a John Collins trade, right? As of right now, as of the recording of this video, this team has not brought in Bogdan Bogdanovic yet in free agency, but they are apparently in pursuit of him, which further pushes the perimeter rotation down, which just, the more and more you look at the roster, especially if they have Bogdanovic, but even if they don't, John Collins seems like the guy that's getting pushed out a little bit here, especially at the 4 spot. I mean, I hope they're not planning on playing Gallinari at the 3. He's a much better fit at the 4, and he's certainly a starting caliber 4. And that makes me think that there's no way John Collins is coming off the bench. So it makes me think that there's a John Collins trade in the works here, because if they're planning on playing Gallo at the 3, then the entire tone of this video is going to be completely different here a couple months into the season. So what that makes me think is that John Collins could potentially be on the move. That's been rumored for a little while, and it would make total sense to me. And this is a guy that they don't really want to pay in restricted free agency next year. He's putting up a ton of stats, which makes me think that someone is going to pay him, and Atlanta would have lost him for nothing anyway. So you go ahead and bring in his replacement in Gallo, and then you potentially make a move here where you do move John Collins for something on the perimeter, future draft compensation, whatever it may be. And I would actually love that move if I was a Hawks fan. I honestly, like, given where this team is at, and I understand that they've got younger players, you want Collins to grow and develop with them, I think that Gallo is simply a better fit. And then, like I said, you've got Clint Capella there in the front court to kind of make up for some of the defensive issues with Gallo and with the rest of the roster. And then the rookie is really interesting as well off the bench. And if you can have that 9-man rotation, the one that I listed, without John Collins, and turn John Collins into something, whether that be draft compensation or a player within the rotation, this could certainly be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. And I know we do this every year. There's always a team or 2 or 3 teams that we're thinking, oh, they could make a run at the 8 seed. They could actually be pretty decent next year. I do think that Atlanta is putting themselves in that conversation. I don't think that they've had the best offseason out of any team in the league. I'm kind of withholding judgment on that right now. But they've certainly helped themselves between free agency, between the draft, and where they're positioning themselves now via a trade as well. Now, for Collins specifically, in terms of potential trade options, I honestly have no idea. I don't know exactly where he would end up going, but I would be shocked if they're not shopping him right now. Again, unless the mindset here is they're going to be running Danilo Gallinari at the 3, maybe bring in Bogdanovic, and you're looking at Young, Bogdanovic, Gallinari, Collins, and Capella, that 2 through 4 group would be a nightmare defensively. Like, it would not be a good look at all if you're thinking Gallo is going to start guarding 3s every night during the regular season. So unless I'm completely misreading the Gallo situation, I think it's pretty possible that John Collins is going to be on the move, and I don't mind that for Atlanta. Now, overall with this roster moving forward, again, I've been pessimistic about it in the past. Ultimately, it's going to come down to Trae Young and his growth as a player, as well as the other young guys on this roster, of which they have plenty, whether that's DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, Kevin Huerter, whoever. The other interesting thing to take a look at here is down the line. Let's just say that they look like a legitimate team, a team that can, be a playoff team. When you've got those younger guys on the roster, whether Collins is still there or not, or whether they get draft compensation in exchange, they're always going to be a threat to bring in a potential star to this roster, whether that be Bradley Beal, whether that be insert next superstar that gets unhappy here. They're going to have some assets to be able to possibly move. Again, whether that's Collins or whether that's, compensation they get in exchange for Collins, plus Huerter, Reddish, and DeAndre Hunter. If it comes down to it and they have a hole in this roster that they think that they want to fill, I would not be surprised to see them make a move like that. For example, if they get Bogdanovic and they're planning on moving Collins, you can go Young, you can go Bogdanovic. There's a hole there at the 3 spot, Gallo at the 4, Capella at the 5. You've got the rookie off the bench as well at the 5. And you find a guy on the wing that can really help your team, and you trade any combination of Huerter, Hunter, Reddish, and Collins, or the compensation you get in exchange for Collins, and all of a sudden that looks like a really, really interesting team. I'm not saying they're going to be winning titles or making Eastern Conference Finals or anything, but from a versatility standpoint, specifically from an offensive standpoint, outside of the 5 spot where those guys just can be rolling to the rim, that is a interesting group. And if it really came down to it, they could use the salary of Capella or even Gallinari if they really needed someone to match salaries and match contracts with as well. So I'm not incredibly optimistic about this team, being a contender or anything, but the more that I look at this roster, the moves that they've made and the moves they could make moving forward, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Hawks potentially being a playoff team and just being a bit more of a threat in the Eastern Conference and throughout Trae Young's career here moving forward than I was whenever I made that video, 6 months ago or something at this point. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying they're doing everything right, and I still have concerns about them as it relates to Trae Young's ability to win basketball games and their overall talent level and asset level, but still, I think they've helped themselves this week, and I want to give them some credit for that. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.